Come on into the ditch. I'm your resident ditch witch, Tara Tyne, and we're about to get witchy, whether you like it or not. This week it's been proper snowing in Ireland, which doesn't happen very often, and when it does, it causes the whole country to come to a standstill, and we all get a great giggle out of it. But it means I have to wait a wee bit longer to get going on the garden, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to squeeze another little movie reaction video in before that all takes off. Just a wee tiny one. This one was requested by a lot of people on YouTube and Facebook after my Practical Magic video a few weeks ago, and since it's one of the great witchy movies, I figured it was about time we had a little look at the witches of Eastwick. This film was directed by George Miller, who randomly also directed Happy Feet, Babe 2, Pig in the City, and the Mad Max franchise. Just so random. The first thing I noted from cast interviews about both this and Practical Magic, which was released more than a decade later, is that Hollywood struggles to market these movies. Like, is it a horror? Is it a chick flick? Is it a dark comedy? It's a thriller. No, wait. Fantasy. No. Wait, what was the question? No, people, it's a witchy movie. They're Hollywood. You can have that one for nothing. That tells you everything you need to know. The chances are it's all of the above, rolled into one, with a healthy side serving of vivid sets and costumes, supernatural elements, a little dash of sexy, and quite possibly some altered states of consciousness as a vehicle for certain plot aspects. Is that too much to ask for? Oh yeah, and we need about 2 of them every year, forever. Look, I'm just saying, we've seen a lot of superheroes, we've seen a lot of teen horror and rom-coms. Like, if you're stuck for a script, I have one here. Call me. Anyway, yes, Witches of Eastwick. Just like Practical Magic, it was based on a novel, and this time by John Updike, and it was released in 1987. Unlike Practical Magic, it managed to triple its production budget at the box office. My theory, both had stellar casts, but only one had Jack Nicholson, which may have lured some of that extra male demographic in. I don't know. I'm honestly just making this up as I go along, to be honest. So we've got Michelle Pfeiffer as Suki Ridgemount, a stressed out columnist for the local paper and single mother to a clatter of children. Pfeiffer said in one interview that she believes in witches. So that probably means she's a witch. Then we've got Susan Sarandon as Jane, a long-suffering music teacher and a highly talented cellist. I don't know why, but throughout this entire film, I'm forever expecting Sarandon to produce a handgun from somewhere. In real life, she's apparently superstitious about electricity, probably means she's a witch. And Cher, oh, if you wanna know, plays Alex, a single mother of one who sculpts these awesome fertility-type booby dolls. She's definitely a witch. The film opens on one of my favourite cliches from witchy movies, the classic camera pan down over the treetops. It's as though we're actually on the broomstick about to touch down in this really sleepy, picturesque town. You see that used in Hocus Pocus as well. And we're reassured pretty early on that although these 3 women are somewhat dissatisfied with life, these are some bloody tolerant witches. Because they sat through way too much of this really boring assembly run by the pervy principal before conjuring a big storm to break it up. P.S. that would never happen in Ireland. We mightn't be any good with snow, but by God we wouldn't let a bit of rain stop us. Also, we'd organise it indoors. Like sensible people. There's something we should note about this movie, which is that there is little to no discussion about the powers that these women have. There's a couple of, oh, did we do that? Moments like scattered here and there, and basically not another word of explanation about it. It's one of my favourite themes in The Witches of Eastwick, the focus on discourse and somewhat synchronised psyches of these 3 fairly ordinary women, which turns out to be where the real magic happens, obviously. So then we've got some nice foreshadowing happening with the girls singing Someone to Watch Over Me into their martinis, and once again, their shared intentions conjure up some shit. Foreign prince on a black horse, handsome but not too handsome, nice eyes, nice ass, nice etc. Cue Jack Nicholson, playing Jack Nicholson, except slightly more mysterious, and lo and behold, he's just bought the local mansion. How convenient. Naturally, this sets the gossip flying around town, although strangely, no one in Eastwick can seem to remember his name when they're talking about him. Please note, that's a surefire way to tell that there's trickery afoot. Then we get introduced to poor Felicia Alden. Ah, Jesus, Felicia tries. She really does. She knows that the devil himself has just landed in Eastwick and spends basically the rest of the film getting gaslit into oblivion. Jack Nicholson, meanwhile, spends the first few days of his new life in Eastwick negging Susan Sarandon and flattering Cher and the Pfeiffer, who are sucked in by his supernatural skills in NLP. He introduces himself remotely to the town by hoofing Felicia down a flight of stairs and psychically revealing his name to the whole town at once. It's Daryl Van Horne. Cher is the first to visit the big house when she gets hijacked into an impromptu lunch invitation by Van Horne. He then spends most of the meal pontificating to her about feminist issues, which feeds into her fears and her ideals, which apparently works, and she gives in and goes for the tour. After a rather strange and unhealthy seduction, stuff happens. But Cher has his number. She's on the bucko! Meanwhile, Felicia's on the gruel and she accuses her husband Clyde, the local newspaper editor, of being a spineless failure. Pretty insightful metaphor for the entire media industry there, Felicia. Nevertheless, the appearance of the Pfeiffer with a pot plant is too much for her nerves these days. I guess it's kind of understandable. Over at Jane's house, a snapped cello string draws blood and ding dong! Daryl's at the door with a fiddle under his arm. Quelle surprise! Jane brings him in and gives him tea, as you do, and tells him how his house used to be a site for burning witches. Cozy. So he pulls the same seduction spiel on her, they have a sexy jam sesh, then some more negging. Then some stuff happens and we get treated to this iconic flaming cello scene. It's epic. As a result, Jane has a sexual awakening and seems to have gone full Thelma. Jackie Boy manages to sidestep the elephant in the room and shoots straight for Suki, his last remaining target. The foursome then proceed to have what I'm willing to bet is the most awkward game of tennis in movie history. And can we just take a moment and acknowledge that Jane's swimsuit and tennis shoes visor perm getup is a whole mood. Very soon, things start getting supernatural again. The ladies are now able to play tennis with their butts. True story. A stray tennis ball causes another freak storm, and at no point does anyone say, "Hey, isn't this really friggin' weird though?" On the contrary, the group's mood is considerably lighter by now, and so it's time to retire to the indoor swimming pool, which looks like it was designed by Penn and Teller. Yes, that's a zebra. Suki's like, "Oh, don't come near me, I'll get pregnant." Daryl the devil's like... And then there's kids and balloons, Pavarotti singing Ness and Dorma, Susan Sarandon's hanging off the chandelier. I presume someone has opened a bottle of fizzy lifting drink, because then we're all away. And still, no one's like, "Hey, we're flying, what the f***?" Then Daryl's like, how should we round off the night? I know! You tell me all your darkest fears and I'll record them. For posterity, or so it can own your soul, or whatever. The next morning, upstanding citizen Felicia Alden, poor Felicia, takes to the floor at church to try and warn her fellow parishioners that the devil is walking amongst them. I mean, she's not wrong. I think Felicia gets a bad rap in this town, I really do. Now Jane, who's dressing like a new romantic goddess and swearing at children, which obviously improves her playing exponentially, gets her first whiff of disapproval and scandal from her fellow shoppers at the grocery store. That's always how it starts. Next it'll be with the pitchforks. Then Suki gets the sack and Cher suggests that maybe it's time to call an end to this menage a quatre thing, and dear Felicia is left to spit the pips. She goes full primal at one point actually and channels Daryl's plan to impregnate the women. She wants to go and warn them about what's happening, like, "I told you she was a decent skin." But unfortunately for her, her previously loving husband Clyde decides to beat her to death with a poker instead. Suki is racked with guilt because she's convinced that they've caused Felicia's death, and the ladies begin to turn on each other. Daryl's waiting not so patiently by the phone for the victims of his nefarious plan to come running back to him. Not gonna happen. And is naturally rather disappointed when they don't. Alex gives him the brush off, Suki says no to his fruits, and Jane gets a spine-chilling warning pinned to her front door. and a pregnancy diagnosis. Dun dun dun! She heads over to tell Daryl and finds him fantasizing about their nightmares. Ew. And manages to escape with her life. And I reckon these next few scenes are actually probably what inspired a large amount of the craft. The witch's nightmares all start manifesting themselves into reality, which lands Sookie in the hospital, where it's revealed that all three women are in fact pregnant. Dun dun dun! Daryl, you git. This scene here is how I imagine Jack Nicholson spends his days in real life, FYI. And his feelings are very upset because his lady friends are no longer spending all their time indulging him and teaching him what love is. I wanna know what love is! Alex is like, sure, let's do that then. And boom, Sookie's all better. So it's time to go kick some demon butt, but we're apparently doing it Stanley Kubrick style. The next morning, Daryl's feeling confident enough to go out for an ice cream, leaving three vengeful and determined witches alone in his house to do some very quick and some very silent witchcraft on him. This, of course, spills over into the church. I feel a bit sorry for this priest. He can't seem to get through a mass in this place at all. The terrifying threesome are now using Daryl's own tricks against him, prompting yet another signature ranting monologue from Nicholson, who, as it turns out, is super jealous of God. Lols. Then another staple of witchy films, cleaning up the evidence. And before you know it, here's Johnny, and the ladies are all like art casual. Cher's there eating a banana. That doesn't really work out too well for them, unfortunately, but thankfully they still have those powers. Ah, yeah, remember those? So their wax doll has been smashed and released this big CGI demon thing that's been apparently wearing a Daryl suit all along. And the ladies decide it's time to send Daryl back where demons belong. Into the fire, boy! Cut to 18 months later, the ladies have set up a commune in Daryl's mansion and are raising his demon babies as a singular family unit. I know, I didn't see it coming either. But they're not allowed to think about Daryl because he lives in the telly screen now and they don't want to accidentally summon him again. But seriously, would it not be easier to forget about him if he just like sold his house and moved to Texas? But I digress. Daryl raises his children from inside the telly screen, the ladies get a new gaff, and that's it. The film's over. I have two things to say about this film. The first is that with all the sequels and reboots we've had in the last couple of decades, this, perhaps more than any other, needs revisiting. If Cher happens to see this, reboot please. I want to see that house during lockdown. The second thing I want to say is bring Felicia back. Yeah, she was a good guy after all. I'm starting to kind of love these witchy movie reaction videos whilst I'm working on my next history video, so drop your suggestions in the comments below. Also, I want to know what you think about the Witches of Eastwick. Is it a female-centric story of self-ownership and boundaries, or is it a male-centric fantasy about ultimately being destroyed by your own desires? Is it both? Is it neither? Who cares? Actually, I care. Probably a little bit too much, to be honest. I could talk about this stuff all day. You can tell I'm great fun at parties. Hit subscribe for more fun and witchy adventures. I upload every Thursday and you're not gonna want to miss it. Slán agus beannacht, goodbye and good luck to you.